Pablo Picasso once said that every child is an artist. The problem is how to remain an artist when we grow up. But he also said that anything we can imagine is real, which really doesn't make sense, so maybe don't give any credence to what he says. But regardless, we're going to show you today how to make some beautiful pieces of art and how to become a fine gentleman in the process. To get started, we're going to put down some Colortech 600 WB on our canvases. We're going to be using black today. It's a reflection of how our soul feels, since we're artists. Actually, the reason we put down black is because it makes the metallics really pop. We usually either go black or white. Today we're going to go black. We're going to mix up our 600 WB. First step is to pre-mix part A here. Just want to make sure that all of the pigment gets mixed up really nice. A little pro tip, if you take a paper towel and wrap it up a few times, you can shove it into the little groove around the ring. That'll keep the epoxy from going everywhere. This is a graduated cup here. We're going to use the 4:1 ratio. And then we'll put our part B in. So on these cups, the way they work, you've got one side that's the part A, and the other side is the part B. They're a little confusing. So on the 4:1, we've got our part A at the 10 line on the left-hand side. Then we're going to fill up to the 10 line with our part B on the right-hand side. And that will give us our correct mix ratio. And you'll want to set a timer for 2 to 3 minutes or have a song playing that's 2 to 3 minutes long. Because when you're just trying to judge time, when you're not doing anything, or if you're having Thanksgiving dinner with your in-laws, 2 to 3 minutes is an eternity. I'm just going to pour a little bit out on each canvas. We'll get our Jackson Pollock on, if you will. That'll be $4,000. Just gonna make sure we get our sides. Now that we've got the Japanese calligraphy out of the way, we'll just use our little foam roller here, and we're just gonna put all this material out on the surface. Okay, while we let these cure out, we're gonna get our metallics ready. We've got some funky colors here. We're gonna do 2 different color schemes. I'm a BYU fan, go Cougars. So we're gonna do one is kind of like BYU colors, and then another one in kind of some modern, some browns, some cool, kind of an orangey brown. We're gonna put in, it's half a teaspoon to each half a cup of finished product. So we're gonna break them down and just add the metallics in, stir them up, and we're gonna let them sit overnight. And that just helps disperse the pigment so you don't end up with little starbursts. Now we'll just let these soak overnight. The pigments will disperse. Tomorrow morning we'll come back and add our part Bs and make some beautiful art. All right, these beauties have dried. Now we get to play. This is really why we're here, right? The epoxy has been sitting overnight. Those pigments have dispersed. What we're gonna do now is just whip the part A's up again, and we'll add in our part B's, mix them up, we'll go to town.
Now when I'm mixing up, I like to go from lightest to darkest to help avoid cross-contamination as much as possible.
Because we're on a canvas here and the wrap around the sides, we're just going to take some of this white that we're going to put down first, and we're just going to brush it over the edges so that the epoxy rolls right on over there. Beautiful. Now that I've got the sides all coated, I'm just going to take some of this. I don't want to use all of it because we're going to do what's called a dirty pour. So I'm just going to take some of this and pour it on each one. Whoop. Whoop. I'm just going to spritz it with some isopropyl alcohol just to help knock down some of these lines in it. All right, we're going to have some fun with our dirty pour here. Basically, we're just going to pour in our epoxies and layer them, and then we'll dump them all out. Okay, we just kind of flatten out the cup, and then we're just going to pour.
So you can see that I'm going in lines on this piece because that's the way I chose to do it. But there's really not a wrong way to do the dirty pour or even this whole project. If you wanted to go each individual color, you could do that. If you wanted to paint one canvas just one color, you could do that as well. This is art, right? We're artists. Who's to say what's right or wrong? But you can see that the metallics are really starting to smooth and move and do a whole lot.
And as this sits, it's going to move and level off and do quite a lot of stuff. But I'm liking this. Another technique we can do with the isopropyl alcohol is kind of a pounded steel look.
Generally when we do this, we'll wait for the epoxy to set up a little bit so that as the alcohol drips off of your hand, those craters that it produces will stay there even when the epoxy is moving.
We'll do another technique over here on these ones. Again, we're just going to mix up our epoxies. We'll whip up the part A's just to get those pigments that may have settled into the bottom. Then we'll put in our part B and go for it.
Again here, I'm just brushing the epoxy onto the sides so that it can continue down over the edge of the canvas. We'll put out the metallics again just like we did on the other one with a little weenie roller, and then you can see those really harsh lines. We'll just knock them down with a little bit of the alcohol, get rid of the chip brush hair that happened to be stuck on the surface there. Then I'm just going to take a little tongue depressor and flip some of those other colors out there. And this is a really cool look, and you could just leave it, but we wanted to go for a Tiger King effect. So we kind of brushed the whole surface with a weenie roller to give it a striped effect. And then just hit it with some alcohol to knock down any harsh lines.
We've let these sit overnight. They look really, really cool. We actually cranked the heat up quite a bit so that they wouldn't move so much. The heat actually sets off the epoxy a little bit quicker. So they moved a little bit, but not too much. And that's exactly what we were hoping for. No art would be complete if you don't sign it. So we're just gonna sign down here. And you can look for these bad boys in the Guggenheim. Maybe the Met, I don't know. We're just gonna clean these off just on the backs. There's a little bit of some dripping, So we'll just hit those with a piece of sandpaper, maybe even just a razor blade, because it's only been a few hours since we did these. And they're still a little bit green, a little bit soft, so we can just clean up the backs. And then we'll hang these on a wall, and then we'll move on to our plexiglass project.
I find that listening to synth pop while looking at this art really adds a whole new dimension to the artwork itself. So those canvases are really cool, and they look really good on a wall. But what if you want to jazz it up a little bit? I'm going to show you how to do something similar on plexiglass to really add a showpiece to your living room.
To get started, we sanded both sides of the plexiglass with 80 grit sandpaper. And that helps us get the surface scuffed up enough that the metallics will bite to it, and also on the back side so that it will diffuse the light a little bit. We've got our metallics, they've been sitting overnight. We're gonna mix them up again, 2 parts A, 1 part B, and then we're gonna pour them out just like we have with the other metallic projects that we've done.
You want to make sure you get your ratios right here, because nothing's worse than making a really cool piece and not have it set up. Not that I would ever have done that or know from first-hand experience. And remember, we're going from lightest to darkest to avoid any cross-contamination between colors.
We've got our epoxies mixed up, and I've once again drawn inspiration from something that I love, the Utah Jazz. So we're gonna use some cool, funky colors. Again, we're just gonna start with taking our white and putting it down on the surface as kind of a base coat. We'll just hit it with the alcohol to help it lay down a little bit. Then we're just gonna play. We're gonna do some dirty pours and see where this takes us.
As we layer the epoxy, we try and do a staggered approach. A little bit of some dark, a little bit of some light, so that as we lay it out, it kind of gives it a marbly or even kind of a granite look. And you can see the different colors as they come out of this cup, especially right here with this white streak right there. It really does some cool things as it settles and moves through the epoxy. I'm again laying it out in kind of a lined pattern to create some veins or some striations, but there's really no wrong way to do this. Don't be afraid to experiment. If you think you've got an idea, go for it. You're doing this for you, so there's really not a wrong way to do this. So don't be afraid to experiment.
We've had some fun. We've laid out all of our metallics. Now we're just gonna leave it alone. It's gonna continue to move for the next couple of hours, and then tomorrow morning, it's gonna look real nice.
You can see how cool it looks now that we've got it all framed up and backlit. And really it wasn't that difficult. If I can do it, I know you can do it. I hope you guys have enjoyed watching as we took these products that were originally designed for floors and turned them into beautiful works of art that are right at home on a wall. I can't wait to see what you guys, who have actual talent, can come up with. Make sure to tag us on Instagram.